So there are two ways that we can make the most of this number one asset in Port Hueneme. We can develop it to a higher and better use and generate economic activity that translates to revenue enhancement to the city, or we can seek compensation from property owners who most benefit from having a beach in their front yard. So here are our challenges. For asset utilization, it's always about competing interest and NIMBYism. And when I say competing interests, you have part of the community believes that we need to do more to attract people and retain and benefit, capitalize upon their spending while they're in Port Hueneme. And then there are others that no, this is my front yard and it's mine alone, and nothing can be done to develop this area. I want to retain it in its current condition. So those are, fundamental challenges that we have to overcome. Accomplishments: we have attracted developer interest to Hueneme Beach and some of our other available properties. We are looking at strategic partnerships with the like of the Oxnard Harbor District to how we can work together, because they're in need of land, and every available opportunity to expand their inventory, they're going to be very interested. Unfinished business. Well, we're in a talking stage here. We're not quite yet at a project development stage, and there's going to be a lot of public vetting of these concepts as we move through that process, and that means hearings and the like, community engagement. So at this point, I think we have some promising ideas, and we're on the upward climb, but we're still at kind of the infancy stage of making the most of what we have. So that's why I give this a C+ rating. So now we're getting into other areas of concern that we're having to deal with. Water issues. We kind of have a perfect storm when it comes to costs. We have the lowest household incomes of any city in Ventura County, and yet we also are charging the highest water rates of any municipal provider in Ventura County. That's the perfect storm. Charging the most when people have the least ability to pay. We also have problems with quality, and that has to do largely with the extended drought and the fact that we're having to draw water deeper into the aquifers, and that translates to more mineral content that discolors the water, makes it taste not as good as if it was treated water. And when we receive water of that condition, our water treatment plant does not accept that kind of product. In other words, it clogs up the filtration system. So here we are paying the highest rates of other municipal water providers, and right now we're receiving among the lowest quality water of any municipal provider. And then finally, we got a supply issue. And that is that the city's water treatment plant is actually on land that's leased from the city of Oxnard. And likewise, the water it receives from its primary source, that is the United Water Conservation District, which is a groundwater purveyor, the water line itself is under lease, and that has expired. And so we're in the course of negotiating the continued use and the rights and the conditions by which we can get that water through the Oxnard-Hueneme pipeline. So we have our challenges when it comes to water. There are broader issues than just the local spectrum. We have regulatory problems. We have, in the case of the United Water Conservation District's spreading grounds, where the water is diverted from the Santa Clara River and then directed into the areas that will allow water to be percolated into the aquifers. Well, a lot of that water is being devoted to replenishing, reestablishing steelhead trout. And so the United Water Conservation District is obligated to build a state-of-the-art $30 million trout ladder in order to allow for that species to be able to regenerate further upstream in the Santa Clara River Basin. And yet, the benefit of doing that is very suspect in terms of the number of species that really are taking advantage of this incredible expense. The bottom line is, we all pay for that. And it's just getting that much more expensive for what you would have to question as a marginal return on your investment. We have new regulations that try to establish the safe yield of our groundwater supplies, and when you're done with it, the short story is that means that we're going to end up having less water we can draw through our aquifers that serve this area, and the water we receive from the United Water Conservation District. Still, the thrust of all this is it's just going to continue to cost us more and more. Anyway, the solution, in my view, comes from a collaborative involvement of our partners, and I think of the Channel Islands Beach Community Services District, I think of the Navy, I think of the City of Oxnard as being our main collaborators that we need to work with and share our respective resources for our mutual benefit. So, challenges, well, I just mentioned this, state allocation of water. We don't have a supply problem, we have a distribution problem. Up north, we have issues with the delta and the smelt fish, and how much water needs to be used to make certain that that particular fish species is able to sustain itself. But that consequently means that a lot of the water that could otherwise be captured and sent south is being lost. And that's the environmental constraints issue. Outcomes, as I mentioned, what it all comes down to is that we're going to be paying higher water costs, and we're going to be facing a diminished supply. And then, in terms of unfinished business, as I mentioned, we have to work collaboratively. We are trying to have those discussions right now. We got a ways to go. And we have to negotiate the infrastructure itself, like our water plant and the pipeline that brings United Water Conservation water to Port Hueneme. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm rating this as a C+ because we are on the right track, but we do have an upward climb. So I'm kind of knocking it down a few points because we do have a lot of work to be done, but we are on the right path. Shoreline erosion, sand balance. This is not news. From day one, from the point in time that Congress established and the Corps of Engineers established what our replenishment needs are at Hueneme Beach, we have been shorted ever since. And the cumulative amount of sand that we're now short is about 8 million cubic yards. What does that mean? It means that we had a steady state requirement of about 1.2 million cubic yards a year that would be delivered on a biannual basis. And we're now 8 million cubic yards behind what we should have received by now. And the consequence is we're looking at more frequent and severe shoreline erosion events. So here's a graphic showing you the risk zone. The yellow line in both the 1939 photo and the 2015 photo shows the inland extent of shoreline erosion And what would happen in the event that we had lost all of our sand bypass? It would put $55 million in public and private improvements at risk, and potentially expose 436 homes and over 1,200 people in a similar at-risk position. So this is a significant concern to the city, and it just underscores the importance of what we have in front of us to deal with shoreline erosion. It isn't just about pretty sand on the beach. It's about people's properties. So what are our challenges when it comes to shoreline erosion? Well, we've got disjointed responsibilities. The County of Ventura is responsible for coordinating our biannual sand replenishment operations because they manage the Channel Islands Small Craft Harbor, where there is a sand capture area, and they control, those arrangements with the Corps as to the timing and the amount of sand that we receive down coast. We're always subject to congressional funding, even though there's a stated obligation. The federal government is responsible for making us whole. There's not money that accompanies that obligation, so it's somewhat of a hollow guarantee. The outcome is that we need to provide for a local strategy that binds all of the stakeholders and the political players together so that we can have a voice in Washington. I think the ideal would be for special legislation that would elevate the importance of our circumstance so that we don't go through these same maturations every 2 years in terms of funding and how much sand that we're supposed to receive. The shortfall is we're still not there. It's this kind of a concept of a joint powers authority is still in a very much a malleable state. It's very informal, the discussions that have occurred to date, and frankly there are competing interests, and the county's interests of delivering sand may compete with their desire to provide sand for unincorporated areas of the county, such as Hollywood Beach and Silver Strand, and so we don't necessarily have all the same constituents in mind. So as a consequence, I give this the lowest rating of all of the activities we're engaged in, a D+. I give it a plus only because we've set out kind of a game plan, but a D in terms of performance. So here's some coming attractions and unsung heroes. We have a lot of activity occurring at the north end of town on Channel Islands Boulevard, with several new businesses coming into town. In the middle of town, CVS Pharmacy is about to replace the former Mary's Market, also known as the Port City Plaza Shopping Center. And then we have Yilo Industries, which is a medicinal cannabis manufacturer that does infusions for edible medicinal cannabis products. So we've got a lot of things for our little town in the works, and they're soon to hit the ground. Some things that are on the fringes, so to speak. A lot of scuttlebutt around town. There's a renewed interest to revisit the rebranding of the city, from separating itself from the Port of Hueneme, making it from the city of Port Hueneme to the city of Hueneme Beach. This is not new. It may even find its way to the 2018 ballot to get the public's read on this idea. Harnessing technology. There are thoughts that we may be a candidate to provide high-end internet service as a utility function of the city proper. So we could benefit our commercial businesses, our residents, with high-end technology and at the same time capitalize upon the potential economic return as a utility provider. And then finally, cultivating new industries. We have some very boutique type of industries that are already present in Port Hueneme. The Stellar Biotechnologies, which is a very innovative, state-of-the-art biotech kind of company that's already here in Port Hueneme. The thoughts are that we have all the amenities, the attractions that would allow for more of these types of businesses to be brought to Port Hueneme. Unsung heroes are volunteers. I mean, I can't say enough about this. This is a slate of some of the faces you've seen and the names you've heard about, and there are many, many more. But they are changing the face of Port Hueneme. They are stepping up and helping us carry on, given the fact that our resources have become more and more meager. And I can't say enough about these folks. They're our unsung heroes, and we'll see more of them in the coming years. So in conclusion, what condition is our condition in? Well, when you all add up those individual grades, my assessment is that we're in a solid B position. Now, most of us would say, well, that's pretty good. Of course, I'm always aspiring to the A position, and my old man would never accept a C position when I was in school. So B is not a bad grade, particularly when you consider that we do have various levels of performance and success and failures in each one of these categories. B isn't a bad grade, but we should be aspiring to A+. So that's our goal. And I'm going to leave you on that note unless you have any questions.